a clear sign that there's so much money being stolen and not put into education, not put into healthcare, not effectively put into infrastructure, not put into the districts and the provinces, not put into law and order, and effectively spent to improve the overall quality of life that you are experiencing. Every day, 24 hours, 12 million, 12 million, 12 million, 12 million. After 4 years, 17 billion kina. That's foreign direct investment. And just look at the thousands of jobs it created. We ran out of mechanics, we ran out of welders, we ran out of professional skilled labor to go and meet the human resource demand because our foreign direct investment at that level came in. So since then, we haven't had any repeat in terms of foreign direct investment coming to the country. So if we gauge the performance of the government based on employment, based on the fact that we're going to be grey listed by the Financial Action Task Force, it's imminent, it's going to happen. And if we see that there is absolutely no employment, where's the 1 million jobs? Why is it so expensive? Why is the kina devaluating at a rate that's unprecedented? So these things are signs that we, like Professor mentioned, are not competent enough to effectively do the right reforms, have the right people in the right positions to get the country back on track and effectively manage public money. And just the grey listing alone, it should be a clear sign that there's so much money being stolen and not put into education, not put into healthcare, not effectively put into infrastructure, not put into the districts and the provinces, not put into law and order, and effectively spent to improve the overall quality of life that you are experiencing. So this has been my biggest gripe with the budget. I called out 2024 budget that it was going to fail because they failed to implement the budget according to what members of parliament approved through the Appropriations Act. So this didn't happen. The budget failed, so they've been spending money outside of the budget, then bringing in a supplementary budget to justify the misspending before we go to a budget proper. And this is the country's money plan. The budget's so important because it translates policy into real development, tangible development. So when we start to dilly-dally with the budget and we don't take it serious and we're not held accountable, then the budget is just not worth the paper that it's printed on. So this has been, and this will happen again in 2025. Because right now, you have districts that at a minimum should be receiving 20 million, and some districts have just received 2 million, 3 million kina in DSIP. Whilst other districts have received their full 20 million kina, and through the programs that the ministers control, they've been receiving preferential treatment. Now, I've called it many times, I've called it selective warranting, when the good Prime Minister and his Treasurer treat the Treasury like a tucker box, and they decide what Member of Parliament gets funding, when they get it, and how much they get it. Now, Professor was absolutely right when he said we come from a tribal community. But this kind of tribalism and politics will kill the country. It will kill the country. And this is what's happening. So the 2025 budget will fail, and you mark my words that the member of Chuave came here and this is what he said. They'll have to run a supplementary budget because they haven't met their revenue targets. That means that on a piece of paper, they say that we're going to pass a 28 billion kina budget, and we're going to raise 23 billion from taxation. The government's going to raise it. Now the government's fallen short. But the deficit, the 5 billion that they had to borrow to meet that 28 billion total budget, they've already borrowed that money. But you haven't raised the revenue, you've already borrowed the money, and now you're going to run a supplementary budget to say that you had to cut it. But you already borrowed the 5 billion deficit on the 28 billion total budget, and now you're saying that you can't generate the revenue. So at that level, there's so much monkey business that's taking place. People are becoming so consumed with power and thinking that this is public money and that somehow, somewhere, it belongs to them. And this is why it's so scary, because the people of Papua New Guinea will be the worst affected and the worst hit by this sort of financial mismanagement. So it's been abysmal, the overall track record of this government in terms of how it's handled public monies, and the writing's on the wall. We will be listed on, grey-listed by the Financial Action Task Force. There's no 1 million jobs, there's no burgeoning agricultural resurgence throughout the country. You know it, and you can talk to your friends that have graduated before you. They go out into the workforce, it's a hard slog. It's not like, there's jobs available. It's a hard slog. So this is the reality, and it really calls for some tough decisions and moving forward for real effective and, like Professor alluded to, thoughtful and critical evaluation of the situation so that we can really effectively come up with solutions that work in the national interest. Thank you, Moderator. In terms of the potential contribution that the Highlands can make with our resources, with our people, it can be quite significant. For economic development to take place, you need the 4 factors of production. You need land, you need labor, you need capital, and you need entrepreneurship. Now, coming back to what Professor Nongorr just emphasized on, this whole, the need for electoral reform and the need for the electoral system to be robust and resilient. This is something that we haven't been able to achieve yet in the country, where we have an electoral process that's able to achieve 1 person, 1 vote, 1 count. We haven't been able to overcome that enumeration challenge. And that just creates and that's either through using technology, biometrics, QR code. The system's already there. They apply it in India, the largest democracy on planet Earth. And they're able to wrap up elections in India within 2 months. So when we continue to fumble and drop the ball and defer elections and then bring it back, it just comes back to what Professor alluded to, competency. That you have very incompetent people in the system that are inept and unable to effectively deliver. So for the Highlands, I think it's really important for the next 50 years that there has to be a paradigm shift in the way we're thinking and in the way we do things. So we have to not only expect accountability to increase in our leaders and in the systems, but we also have to increase the accountability that we apply in our own lives. And this is something that I see that a lot of people are just not willing to do. All right, I'll just give a simple example. Yumi Islands, wamda tumbuna blimi emno planning boy. Now why no you smile, samla line smile? Because we chew betel nut. And we chew it more than the coastals. I'm true, huh? Is it a fact to be proud of? I'm just talking about how it affects your health. I'm just talking about how it affects your ability to focus on things, your overall discipline, hygiene, how we just even in the elections. Before, in the Highlands to welcome someone, they would break sugarcane. Now, in an election, why smoke stop? And this is a culture, and Professor rightfully said, you as the learned next generation of Highlanders will have to effectively be those agents of change in your respective districts and communities to make sure that going forward, there's a paradigm shift. There's a paradigm shift. And the professor has been very critical about the way things are right now and the situation that we're all in. But on the other side, if you want the world to be a better place, you have to become better and you have to stand for something. The country is worth fighting for. The Constitution is worth defending. We have to absolutely demand that our way of life can be better. And we have to expect, notwithstanding that we are a very young democracy, 50 years on, and as Highlanders we've been exposed to the white man for just under 100 years, 92 years, but we've produced enough doctorate holders, PhDs, professors, living example of the absolute pinnacle of what we can achieve. And we've already achieved that. As a region, Highlanders have produced more millionaires, have developed more businesses, provide more employment than any other region. You have that attitude to we call it veni vidi vici in Latin. I came, I saw, I conquered. That's the attitude that we have. But we also have to look and improve that overall empathy so that our conduct and our tribalism is something that becomes something to celebrate. And it's not something that scares the bejesus out of our coastal friends, and then they look at us and say, Highlands are rough to us. Because this is what happens. This is what happens. And it's only through this generation and how you go back and you champion the cause for change in your respective districts and provinces that you will see that things can get better. But if you are not aware of what's happening, if you're not aware, like coming back to the whole electoral process, when the system is rigged and manipulated, then you get the worst people becoming members of parliament. So that's what I've called them. We're not a democracy here that's based on a meritocracy. It's a kakistocracy, where you have the worst, most inferior, most incompetent people in positions of power making decisions about your welfare and the future of the country. Now, how a kakistocracy works is that if you have one prime minister and he lacks a certain level of competence, he'll want to surround himself with others who are just as incompetent, so that they forge this fraternal loyalty and the club just grows. And then it just becomes hard to talk about policy and change government for the good of the people, as you've seen on multiple occasions in failed votes of no confidence. But we have to stand for something, so the fight must continue. Just like that, and it's nothing personal to our brothers that are in government, that are in power, but it's about public policy. You know, private something, it's public policy. So when you don't deal with a kakistocracy, and when you're quiet and you're silent, then that kakistocracy evolves into what they call a kleptocracy. And we will be governed by thieves. everybody will be busy eating, stealing, and creating their own little empires and enriching themselves. And what about the rest of us? A kagistocracy left unchecked will evolve into a kleptocracy, and it'll be a government run by thieves. Now, as citizens of the most populous Highlands region, we only have to check whether the member of parliament that's supposed to represent us is doing his job, if the government's doing their job, by the quality of health that we're experiencing there, the quality of education, the roads, the government services, the law and order. The fact that we are the worst when it comes to social-related killing. We are the worst when it comes to domestic violence. So when we're talking about accountability and moving forward for the next 50 years, unless you also look at redirecting your moral compass and becoming a better citizen that represents the Highlands region and the country, then you will not become a unifying force. You won't become that agent of change. It starts with you. If you point one finger there, how many fingers do you have back pointing at you? 4. So that accountability measure has to be personal. And you have to stand for something. So what is it? What do you stand for? Do you stand for equity? Do you stand for fairness? Do you stand for good governance? What needs to happen with the electoral process is that there has to be a means test. Before anybody can become a member of parliament, do they have a university degree? Have they worked in industry for at least 3 years? Can they speak English? Do they have any criminal record? How much money do they have in the bank? How many assets do they own? What's the value of these assets? Is their net worth a minimum $1 million kina? Then you will see that everybody won't run for elections. But then it offends the Constitution to have a means test, to set qualification that if you don't have a university degree, you can't become a member of parliament. No one sigurado sanap. It offends the Constitution, and your right to public office, your right to stand and become a member of parliament. So without electoral reform that absolutely enforces this one person, one vote, one count, we will continue to have this problem. And the only way to not offend the Constitution by tightening up the laws is for you to go and apply that Melanesian consensus. Educate your people, and then bring everybody to a forum and say, okay, now I'm time to vote now. Usad la kama blida blomipla. One background blue. You good blaman man no good. You got sawe, no got sawe. Some of these members of parliament, before they became a member of parliament, never owned a car. This is a small place, so we know everybody, you know. It's Papua New Guinea, you know America. But now, I'll change him cars, I'll change him socks. Before I come up member of parliament, no got girlfriend, no got marry. Now marry. I'll change him marry, I'll change him socks. This is what happens. And you laugh because you think it's all right. And then we just continue to encourage this poor behavior. And people that are becoming members of parliament fail to understand why you're in public office. So we perpetuate this cycle. And at the end of the day, performance drops because they lack competence, there's no accountability, and everybody's busy feeding at the expense of the people. So, my appeal to you, Highlanders, is for you to demand more and expect more, for you to rise up to the challenge and stand for something. Then if that's the attitude that you can adopt and you can develop, and then you can also spread and disseminate throughout your villages and your districts, then it'll be a great place for the next 50 years. So I'm Lilik Tok Tok Blumi. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Name you? Clement. Thank you, Clement. The whole issue of competence, it just comes to the core of Clement's question about why in the last 50 years, when you look at the country when we had independence, the only mine that we had was Bougainville, Panguna. And the country was quite well off. When you just look at the strength of the PNG kina compared to the US dollar at the time, we were on par. We matched the US dollar, and we just had one mine. The socio-economic indicators at the time were very good. Quality of life was very good. Per capita income was very good. And GDP growth, in terms of relative to the population at the time, was quite high. Okay, 50 years on, and now we've got Oktedi, we've got Porgera, we've got Wafi Gopu, we've got Harmony Gold, we've got we've got Lihir, we've got all these mines. Porgera being the most volatile and the most contentious one, and all the reason why we haven't been able to effectively grow the economy at the scale that it was growing when we only had Panguna, it just boils down to management. Because there's been so much mismanagement. So we're allowing foreign developers, and they have the money, they have the capital, they have the expertise. We need them to come in, to partner up. But the way we've negotiated these deals, to just give them, 30-year tax holidays. 30-year tax holidays. The way that it's structured with the landowners. And now we're harping on about equity share. Why can't you just do profit sharing? You make money from the gold, okay, just give it to the landowners right then and there. Why are we waiting for equity? And then at the end of it, when they've taken all the gold out of the land and then they've gone, creative accounting, it's going to reduce the overall value, and then equity is going to be zero. So what are the landowners going to get? Depreciated assets and zero value? So it's just been total mismanagement of our resource. And this has really affected how we've been able to manage our financial affairs. And when we're dealing with the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, these are international financial organizations that are the lender of last resort. So we're going to them because we're in trouble, where we don't have the ability to independently manage our financial affairs. That's why IMF is here. That's why World Bank is here. And we don't need them. Why are we now at the beck and call of IMF? Wamla IMF no nabgonda bla Highlands na kugum kawgo lo sit bla fire na ambakage. Or understand the struggles that some of our parents have to go to raise money for school fees. So the total mismanagement of the economy and of our financial affairs has caused IMF and the World Bank to be in the country right now. So without, and this is where the fight must continue, without a change in political leadership, we won't get rid of IMF and the World Bank. That's why they've imposed all these measures. They've encroached on the central bank, which should be completely independent, the Bank of Papua New Guinea. But now you have IMF that's in the central bank determining monetary policy. So they're trying to dictate interest rates. They're trying to manage this auction of FX. And it's all done in secret. And then they keep talking about this 52-point crawl peg depreciation strategy that's so opaque. Nobody knows when it's going to stop. Is when inflation gets to a certain point. And how are they measuring inflation? This consistent rise in the general price of goods and services. Inflation is different here in Port Moresby than it is up in the Highlands. Highlands, we have this concept called price gouging, where you go to a store in rural Highlands, hey, price blow, tinfisem, 20 kinayam, no? Madwag na karamkam na, mi gosem na, mi kalablo PNG na, mi golataw na, mi baim na, mi. What are you going to say? Okay, man. Is the independent ICCC, are they up in the Highlands regulating all these prices? No, they're not. So there's a divergence in inflation to what it is in Lae and Port Moresby to what it is up in the Highlands or in maritime districts in the coast. So that's why their numbers will be glossy and their numbers will show that Papua New Guinea's it's doing great, 2 thumbs up. When the actual reality on the ground is that it's not. Before, 100 kina could buy you a lot of items in the store. Now 100 kina is just nothing. Liblo coconuts, what is it? And then you have so many people that are just hawking and they're peddling wares on the side of the street. Or market mamana, or market line. Salim boy, salim smoke, salim Maggi noodles, salim rice. Is this happening up in the Highlands? This is happening in Port Moresby. So these are the realities that IMF or World Bank won't acknowledge. But that encroachment is something that only through change in political leadership will we address and effectively address it. So we don't have IMF and World Bank in the country dictating our fiscal and monetary policy to the government. So this is, in terms of, can they be removed? Yes, absolutely, they can be removed. We hear that like this government's got this grand like 13-year budget repair plan where they're going to achieve, a fiscal surplus before we go into the election in 2027. These are just colorful phrases to tell you that they will balance the budget. We can balance the budget tomorrow if you critically just cut down on spending. You just balance the budget. If we just say, okay, Connect PNG, great, 2 thumbs up, okay, you may slow him down. If we say the public service and all these operational expenses, recurrent expenses, utilities costs, it's just too high. Can we effectively go in there with a microscope and just reduce it? Then you'll just slash the budget. Because if the budgets are so big and if you're not seeing the impact, where's all this money going? Where's all this money going? So, thank you for the question, Clement. I hope that that answered. Yes, through political leadership change, a successful vote of no confidence, or next election you come in with a new prime minister, then absolutely, it's bye-bye to IMF and World Bank. I'm not blessed, they can't stay here, So thank you.